Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Colorado LTAP Tailgate Talks. This week we are talking about work zone safety. The reason why we're talking about it is, first of all, the last time we talked about distracted driving and the over 3,000 deaths that result every year from it. While most of the deaths in a work zone are for the people traveling through the work zone, it's still where you spend the majority of your workday. The number of crashes in general is increasing in the last few years, with one exception, and work zone fatalities are up from 845 in 2019 to 857 in 2020, which is the last date that we have data available. There were 131 pedestrians killed in work zones in 2019 and 156 in 2020. So the trend is up. The only one that has dropped was commercial vehicle work zone fatalities, and they went from 293 in 2019 to 244 in 2020. So that commercial vehicle work zone fatalities are the only ones that went down. I don't know why. I have a suspicion that commercial drivers spend all their time on the road and probably pay a little bit more attention to our work zones while they're out there. The most important reason why we are talking about this is because you are in these work zones. Your coworkers, your friends, and colleagues are in them, and your families are the ones driving through them as well. Every year, um, there is a national work zone safety campaign. This year, the national work zone theme is work zones are a sign to slow down. So they have this campaign every April, and that is what the campaign slogan is for this year, or the theme. This is an annual public awareness program that lets people know that they need to be careful driving in our work zones. Um, these are our workspaces. Folks need to know that we're out there and have that awareness as they're going through it. We do an awful lot to warn them, right? Miles and miles of signs, pre-warning signs, channelizing devices, all of that. Notices to the media, public service announcements for major projects, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. We do as much as possible to warn the public that we're going to be on the road and that they need to slow down for us. This national campaign is one way for all of us to help educate the traveling public about what it's like working around vehicles that are going 60, 70, 80, maybe even more miles per hour. As we know, many of them are not paying attention already. We talked about that last week when we talked about distracted driving. So share these PSAs if you can with friends and family for your sake as well as for theirs. To give you the best and most recent information on work zone safety, I went to the National Safety Council's work zone safety page, and I discovered that the focus of groups this year, one of the for the studies that they're doing, are on managing workers' situational awareness and the use of electronic devices. Right? No surprise that they're attempting to manage the use of electronic devices, and situational awareness seems to follow along with that topic. Clearly, you lose situational awareness if you are on an electronic device while you're supposed to be working. Cell phone use, music devices, noise canceling, headphones, etc. Those things don't belong in a work zone. We need all of our senses on high alert in the environments we work in, knowing what's going on around us and how we may need to respond. Those are the keys to our survival while we're out there. The best to heighten your situational awareness is to, or the best way to heighten your situational awareness is to constantly have your head on a swivel. Constantly scan the area where your equipment is, its proximity to you and to other pieces of equipment, to the traveling public through your work zone, other workers. Whether you're conducting traffic control or laying asphalt, it's really everyone's responsibility to know what's going on and warn others of any possible dangerous situations. And I know, when I'm up here talking about this stuff that I'm preaching to the choir, when I tell you that it's your job to not only fix the roads, right, but to do it in a way that protects the workers and the traveling public. And that means being consistent in our message, right? Being clear in the way we set up our work zone, in the message that we send, the traffic, and how we expect the traffic to behave. What are some ways that we can help increase our chances of survival in a work zone? Well, let's look at a few. The best way to make sure that you're using the correct signs and placing them properly and to give the clearest, most consistent message is to follow the MUTCD guidelines. And I think most of you know that the MUTCD, the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices, is the source of all proper work zone setups. And Part 6, the small little green one there, is the section that deals just with temporary traffic control. That's probably where most of you get your work zone sign patterns and your processes and procedures from. The whole purpose, so most of you are probably familiar with both of those, or at least part 6 of those manuals, and the whole purpose of the manual is to make sure that we do send that consistent message, right? If everyone's doing it the same way according to the requirements in this manual, no matter where they go in the entire country, they'll be able to understand the same message everywhere, right? They won't have to try to figure it out while they're driving. That's the whole point. So whether it's the device that you're using to channelize traffic, the size of the paddle, where you stand while you're flagging, it should all be done in accordance with the MUTCD guidelines so that we do convey that consistent, clear message every time we set up a work zone and place ourselves or our equipment in traffic. Be aware of the different requirements for low speed, low volume roads versus high speed, high volume roads. So there are different sign sizes, different cone sizes, different types of channelizing devices depending on what your traffic looks like and how fast they're going. Know the parts of a work zone. You'll find all of that in Part 6 of the MUTCD. You really need to know what those 4 or 5 parts of a work zone are and how to create a safe space to place your equipment and your workers and to get your job done. The most vulnerable point for any of you in a work zone setup is deploying that first sign. You're placing yourself in the road and the traffic has no pre-warning that you're out there. Place that first sign as safely as possible on a straightaway in the most advantageous time traffic wise, right? Watch for your opening and make sure that you're out there at the safest possible moment. If you're able to, use a pre-warning arrow board set on the 4 corner flashers or a crash attenuator behind you during sign deployment, especially if you're on a high volume, high speed road. Make sure that you are visible. Use proper PPE for the conditions that you're working under, usually class 2 or 3 for most of you on a high volume, high speed road, but definitely a class 3 PPE at night. Be alert. Remember, keep your head on that swivel. You need that situational awareness when you're in an environment where you've got huge construction and giant pieces of equipment working on one side and traffic flying by at high speeds on the other side. Have that head on a swivel. Stay out of the blind spots of everybody, right? Whether it's the passing traffic or the pieces of equipment that you're working with. At all times when you're communicating, whether it's to traffic or to the operators of equipment, make eye contact with them so that you're clear and you can notice any confusion on their face if they don't understand what it is you're trying to communicate with them, and likewise they'll be able to see yours. Be ready for emergency vehicles to pass through your work zone, right? What are you going to do if an ambulance or a fire truck needs to get through here pretty quickly? It's going to be up to you to try to get some of those, to get a space for them to come through. According to the the NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Association, their fatal accident reporting system, the most recent data that they have, the majority of these work zone crash fatalities are occurring on secondary roads, right? Not interstates or neighborhood roads. Now, these secondary roads are the ones we are all driving on, and some of us have responsibility for some of these secondary roads. These are not all interstates or state-owned properties. A lot of these are the public works responsibility. So these accidents are happening everywhere, and most of them are happening right in the towns we live in. So um, what can you do about it, right? If you're a traveler or you know any, here are some things you can share with them to help keep your workplace as safe as possible. First of all, plan ahead. before they're traveling or before traveling, look up the latest traffic conditions and the route that they may want to take. Um, get information on active work zones if you have it. Lots of websites have information on travel services for traveling public. So get in there, plan your trip. Try to avoid work zones altogether if you can. Good luck with that. I have never taken a trip where I have not found a single work zone. But you can minimize distractions, right? Be aware of your surroundings. Put those devices away while you're driving your car. Avoid changing radio stations. Work zones can change daily, so don't anticipate where you think they're going to be, and or anticipate the traffic pattern because those will change daily as well. Look out for workers. In 2020, 117 workers died in highway work zones. That's the latest on data. 117 of us died. Check your speed. Obey the posted work zone speed limits, right? Look out for stopped and slowed traffic and maintain safe following distances, especially in a work zone. They can be really, things can change quickly, and there might come a time when traffic has to stop quicker than they expect. Be careful around all these large vehicles. They can be harder to maneuver around, slower to respond, and they have lots of blind spots. So avoid making any sudden lane changes in front of trucks, buses, anything like that, construction vehicles. And always, always be prepared for sudden stops. And lastly, read the signs. Make sure if you're communicating any of these tips to traveling family and friends that you let them know that the signs are there to provide guidance through the work zone, right? To tell the traffic what we expect them to do. So make sure that they read the signs and do what they're asked. So some of the key points that we talked about today for work zone safety, again, you have to have a good situational awareness. It's absolutely necessary in a work zone. Handheld electronic devices should not be used unless it's something that you're using to complete your job. If it's some device that gets your job done, that's fine, but use it only for what it's needed for and then put it away because you cannot have your attention diverted from the environment that you're in. Follow the MUTCD Part 6 requirements for work zone setup, proper devices, and the procedures to put those devices out. Make sure that you and your crew are visible and that you make eye contact with operators and traffic when you're trying to communicate with them. And help educate others so that we can all go home safely after work. So the resources that I used to create the presentation today were the National Highway Traffic Safety Association, NHTSA.gov, the National Safety Council, and the Federal Highway Administration. And you can look up the information that I gave you on these websites right here. So thank you again for coming to the Colorado LTAP Safety Talk and Tailgate Talk. I hope you found the work zone safety topic helpful and that you can incorporate it into your safety culture. So we can't move the roads or block all the cars to do the work safely and remove the hazard completely, but these are some of the things that we can do to increase our chances of having no crashes in our work zones. Our project seasons are coming soon, and these are just a few of the things we can do to help keep everyone safe. So let's do it. Some of this stuff is preventable. Let's make sure we're on the safe side of things. Thank you all, and I'll see you all next time.